we're going to do a little Steve Zoo stories.
Ooh, okay.
For Steve, what animal made the worst sound?
Ooh.
Huh. What animal made the worst sound?
Or menacing. We can add annoying and menacing. Can you answer both?
Yeah, well, okay. One of the perks of the job is like if you get there around 8, quarter after 8 in the morning, no one's there, and you can literally hear the lions waking up in the distance, roaring in the distance, dude. That is something. It's the sort of thing you remember when some pushy dad is giving you shit for no good reason. But that's pretty cool. Maybe the donkey, because in the kids zoo, there was a donkey, and it was right by the pony rides where I would sometimes work. And this thing, there were certain days where if it was pissed off, you just have to listen to this. Like friggin', it was horrible. Like every once in a while, it's kind of funny. You go, it's a donkey. When it's all day, I'm like, someone get the donkey. Help it. Do what donkeys like. I know I'm not a zookeeper. I'm just some asshole who works here. But come on.
Now, is the donkey? Were there like rides or whatever? Like, could you ride a donkey? Or
no, you cannot ride a donkey.
You cannot. Okay.
No, they were none of the animals that belonged to the Toronto Zoo you could ride.
Okay, which is good.
So the camels were owned by the Bowmanville Zoo, and the donkeys were owned by some guy. I don't remember who. Yeah, that was a weird.
It's just funny, like they've got all these exotic animals like pythons, lions, elephants, giraffes.
Python ride.
And then they've got donkey, which is a very it's like we have your average cow here over on your right.
Yeah, it's very pedestrian.
Yeah,
one of the most.
You guys want to see a chicken? We got Canada
dog.
Yeah, the neighborhood dog here.
Yo, I'd go see the dog. Come on.
Could you pet the dog?
One of the most popular animals. One of the most popular animals among tourists, especially ones from overseas, was the raccoon.
Really?
Yeah, because
they don't have them.
Yeah.
They don't have them.
There was somebody
out call them trash pandas. They're like, ooh.
I forget. There was somebody from like North America that I ran into, they're not ran into, but they were here and they were like obsessed with squirrels.
Yeah, I have my family comes from the Caribbean, and like when they would visit my family growing up, they would freak out at squirrels because they'd never seen it. It's not a typical thing. So they'd be like, "What's a monster running around the yard and up the trees? This little thing that looks like a
black
giant rat."
Yeah,
they're kind of scary if you don't know what a squirrel is.
Yeah. But we're like, get out of here, yo. But like, I go to Florida and I saw a little lizard. And I was like, woo! Because we don't really have lizards.
Yeah, it's true. And in Florida, we're like, we got a crocodile,
Yeah, we have bigger lizards than that there, friend. Don't touch them. So raccoons, very, very popular.
And the answer on the sound, we got
donkey, lion.
Right. Donkey and lion. Lions are cool. They're cool.
Very cool.
Adam, I have a question for you, Adam, in each of my hands and on both of my feet.
Oh God!
I only have two hands, so I got to put the other question.
Where do you put the fifth question, Jesse?
So,
Think about it.
Think about it. So here are the questions.
Okay.
On top of his head.
Yeah, exactly. You get to pick one. The Siege of Malta.
Okay.
Attack of the Dead Man in World War I.
Okay.
The Blitzkrieg from Second World War.
Okay.
Or the Great Depression. Pick one of those categories and I will ask you the question. It's like Jeopardy style.
Okay, let's do Blitzkrieg.
Blitzkrieg. Let's go. All right.
This is sports related.
Taylor C_2112 on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
For Adam's History Corner, I'd love to hear Adam's take on Blitzkrieg from the Second World War.
Well, I mean, I don't know if there's a take so much as it's an interesting story, but basically Blitzkrieg in German means lightning war. And the idea behind it was instead of marching a bunch of people slowly at each other and then facing, mounting your gun on your shoulder and then, okay, I'm going to fire around. Now it's your turn, which is what they had to do with muskets. As soon as rifling technology was invented, you had, bullets, instead of shooting straight out of a gun, they, in microscopic little ways, they roll out of a gun. And spin so that it makes the bullet go faster and it makes it more accurate, believe it or not. That's what rifling is. And so,
and if you're in that one movie, you can curve the bullet.
That's right. What's that called? That stupid movie.
That awful movie.
Oh, it was bad. With Angelina Jolie.
Shitty gun movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Welcome to Shitty Guns.
Bendy bullets. I can't wait for bendy bullets too.
Man,
Gumby bullets.
Listen, if you're doubting whatever idea you have for a screenplay right now, remember that was a movie.
Wanted. 2008.
Well,
Wanted.
there you go.
Oh,
creative title
terrible.
too. So good.
Yeah, you know what they wanted? Rubber bullets.
There you go.
Bendy rubber bullets.
So
curve a bullet.
So
Yeah.
to make a long story short, in World War I, a bunch of people in the first 6 months of the war shouldered their rifles and marched in column, shoulder to shoulder, 6-7 people deep. So imagine there's 25 of me that way, 25 of me that way, 6 deep, and then there's another row, and there's hundreds of thousands of me. That's a lot. That's just scary. It's a lot of me. And we're all just marching in goose step, lockstep, across a field at each other, while gigantic howitzers are blowing us to pieces. Oh, and by the way, our enemies are doing the same thing, and we're going to line up and we're just going to shoot each other. And that's how the first 6 months of World War I kind of played out. So you had this insane amount of loss. Like I think France lost 250,000 people in a month. 250,000 people, like that. And so what they had to do was create trenches, which we've all seen on the Western Front, and then the war becomes intractable. And one of the reasons that the trenches stuck around so long was because the military commanders could not get their brains around the fact that, what do you mean if I throw 10,000 guys at that particular spot, I'm not going to be able to take it? What do you mean? And that's because none of the generals actually went to the front and went, oh, there's machine guns, so they just mow us down. Crazy. There are stories, especially in the first year of the war, of people literally crawling over mountains of bodies to try to attack the other line. They would just fall on each other. Like there's the accounts that people have are astounding when you really get back into like when the Germans got into Belgium, like just unbelievable stories of just absolute carnage. And so what happens is you have, for 3 more years, you have the British and the French and the Germans just throwing bodies into a meat grinder, and that's what happens. So, long story short, the Brits figure out, if we armored a car and drove it across no man's land, we might be able to break the lines. That's where the tank comes into mind. And what happens is, over the course of time, you start to realize that, if we move quicker and we move with armored vehicles, we're going to be able to break this line. And when they retreat, they're not even going to be able to retreat into their trenches from before. They're just fucked. We can keep them on the run. And the whole idea with Blitzkrieg was to avoid what happened in World War I. So I told you all of that slow war stuff to tell you that the Germans perfected a method, and they did this before the Nazis even came into power. They were working with Russia, believe it or not. Russia was helping to supply them training and weapons because they were not allowed under the Treaty of Versailles to actually train soldiers on their own soil. They weren't allowed to have a big army. They weren't allowed to have an air force or a navy at all. So they would send these guys to Russia. They'd come back, and believe it or not, they developed Blitzkrieg under Russian tutelage. But Russia lost all of that information when Stalin went through all the purges he went through in the 1930s. So the Russians were well aware of what Blitzkrieg was, and they killed all their generals. So then the information just was held with the Germans, which is very, very interesting in and of itself. Fast forward to, let's say, 1939, Russia and Germany agree to divide Poland. And, Germany goes in with like 500 tanks, and the Poles are sitting there and they're going, we're going to fight you back. We've got cavalry, literal men on horses. And the Germans are so quick, their air force, their tanks, their infantry, all work in tandem at the same time, and they're able to knock out like 90% of the Polish Air Force in a day. Gone. And that's what Blitzkrieg is. It's this big punch. Now, the problem with Blitzkrieg, it worked in France as well, by the way. That's why France fell. It was so quick and so fast that the French didn't know what to do. But the problem with Blitzkrieg is if you have an enemy that can take a punch, then you are exposed because you are pushing so far into their area that you can stretch your supply lines. So your tanks start to break down. You start to run out of gas. Your soldiers literally are marching so fast and so far that the shoes are falling off their feet. They're just wearing out. And that's what happened when Germany went into Russia. They made enormous gains in 1941, I believe. 1941 is the first year they went in. Crazy, almost took Moscow, diverted for a second, then went back, changed their plan. If they wanted to win the war, they shouldn't have done that. But what happens is Russia is so big, it just devoured them. It's so big that the Russians just said, okay, we're going to burn everything and we'll keep retreating. And then we're going to let you overstretch. And then we're going to let winter pound the shit out of you. And then we're going to attack you. And that's sort of what happened. Yes.
Adam, what's the name of that phenomenon where the ground flash freezes in Russia? It starts with an M, I think.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. I don't know the name.
Yeah. So what would, I love when every now and then I'm like, I know a thing. So what would basically happen is it just pisses rain in Russia, and the ground gets mucky and awful, and you just sink into it, and in a day, frozen.
Yes.
And you're just stuck. Your vehicles are stuck.
Can't
your
start
supplies are stuck. You're stuck. Nothing works. You're just, what do? You either stay still or retreat. And I mean, those are your options. You can't advance.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called.
Well, and that's what happened. So Blitzkrieg was extremely effective if you are working in a temperate climate, which Western Europe is, and you have an end in sight. As in France, you could drive it in a day? You can drive across it. Russia is going to take you a while. And so that method of warfare was inevitably what lost the Germans what they were trying to do, which was take over Russia so that they could resettle it. So it's a unbelievably effective type of war that changed how war was done. And I think it was like the first massive change in like 500 years. We're talking about it used to be like, let's get nose to nose and then we're going to shoot. And before that, let's get nose to nose and we're going to fire arrows and sword fight each other. This was a massive change. Nobody knew how to react to it, but there is a fatal flaw. And that is if you have enough land, you're going to get sucked up into it. And that's what happened. So that is I don't know if that's my take, but that's what Blitzkrieg was. And that's why you see in football, the blitz, right? You send all your guys at the quarterback all at once.
Is that where the term comes from?
That's right. But the fatal flaw with a blitz is that you are very vulnerable to a pass.
I learned something today.
Yeah, it's all the veterans came home, and that's where they named that play as the Blitzkrieg.